Greetings everyone. On today's video, I'm going to talk about the top 10 best rides in Disneyland, in my humble opinion. Let's roll that intro. Let's establish a few things before I dive in. This is my own personal list of favorite attractions. While things like theming, immersive environments, wait times, and thrills all play major factors, the biggest elements to me are subjective, meaning that like every other piece of entertainment or art, the true beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Also, memories, random interactions with other guests, and family are huge considerations here too. Finally, this list is fluid and is subject to change. Alright, enough preamble, let's get to it. Whoa, Rise isn't even in the top 5? Please allow me to explain. My relationship with this attraction is one that has changed rapidly over the years. Initially, my sister Katie and I rode this the first time ages ago in Hollywood Studios. This was back when you had to get up at 4:30 in the morning, get a ride over to the park, and hope you actually were fast enough on the app to secure a spot. While the ride is virtually identical to its counterpart in Disneyland, I feel like this is where my history with the attraction started, and I felt it worth giving you, dear viewer, the backstory. Don't worry, it won't be the last time I do that in this list. Nowadays, seeing the line for Rise at 40 or 50 minutes for the standby queue is pretty common, at least for me. Sure, it balloons up to 80 or 90 minutes, but getting on the ride isn't nearly as difficult as it once was. The reason it makes my list, however, is for the fact that it is a big swing, which I think mostly connects. What I mean by that is that as theme parks continue to evolve, the usage of screen-based technology has become much more commonplace. But for me, I prefer it when a screen enhances an attraction instead of being the attraction itself. Rise utilizes screens extremely well. From the interrogation room with the shadows, love that little detail, to the massive one that greets you as you first enter the Star Destroyer, these digital windows envelop you in the world brilliantly. While these effects are great, they wouldn't be nearly as effective if the world wasn't brought to life practically. Animatronics, physical sets, a smooth ride-through experience, and clever parlor tricks really elevate this attraction to the new standard of dark ride. Plus, that final drop doesn't hurt either. The Jungle Cruise. Back in the day, this was my favorite attraction over in Walt Disney World. While the absence of the temple sequence is painful in its original incarnation on the West Coast, the ride is still really fun for me. The enjoyment begins right as you enter the queue with the old-timey music and quirky announcements. The ride itself is relatively straightforward, as that is typically the direction of most of the boats. The banks of the various rivers spanning the globe are lined with mostly static animal figures that still delight to this day. Like the last entry on my list here, Jungle Cruise can be made or broken by the cast members, and in this case, the skipper. I've been on some boats with some truly hilarious hosts that can really elevate the cruise. The difference between one that is going through the motions and one that is actively engaged in the guests is very noticeable to me. I also love it when they go off script a little. Don't get me wrong, I love the mainstays of the backside of water and trunks on elephants, but some skippers bring it to another level entirely with their own unique jokes. Just an overall classic attraction that I enjoy to this day. My second of 3 dark rides on this list, Alice in Wonderland, is amazing to me. Taking a film that I'm not overly enamored with and turning it into one of my favorite rides is an accomplishment in and of itself. The delightfully zany world is brought to life and truncated into the span of just a few minutes. Not to mention the dynamic nature of the outdoor portion, which is a point I shall be making with future entries on this list too. Depending on the time of day or night, the ride takes on a different feel to me. The daytime can provide sights of large crowds and possibly a parade route being prepared, while the night presents a cozier feel that is much more relaxing. Either way, you get to bask in the glory of the majestic Matterhorn every single time. Don't worry, I'll get back to the Matterhorn. Anytime I see a short line for Alice in Wonderland, I head right on over, and that's one of the hallmarks of a great ride. Oh, J. Thaddeus Toad, where do I even begin? I have a long-running love affair with this anarchic amphibian. Once again, back in Walt Disney World, I found this attraction to be supremely enjoyable as a little tyke. Memories of it evoke good times with my family. While I have mixed emotions on what it has become over in Florida, I am so glad it still lives on to this day as one of the opening day attractions, no less. Firstly, I love the facade. A British mansion in the countryside replete with 7 chimneys, and just look at that brickwork. Once inside, I find myself having trouble thinking of a more inviting loading area. The warm lighting, the wood carvings, and the books make it feel so comfortable, like a warm blanket on a rainy day. 2 of the standout adornments to me have to be the mural that plots out your impending insane journey and the statue of J. Thaddeus himself. Just love this little guy. The ride itself is just the epitome of delightfulness. Feeling like you are somewhat culpable for the roadway mayhem playing out right in front of your very eyes immerses one more than most of the other dark rides on offer in Fantasyland. While I freely admit that I would like to see the cardboard cutouts replaced with some more practical figures, I think it adds a certain old-school charm not found in most Disneyland attractions these days. I also adore the strange fountain of Toad and his trusty friend/steed Cyril in the square. Like, what is that even doing there? Regardless, I love a good water feature. Lastly, the aspect of the ride that truly makes it one of my favorites is the ending. Now, I'm no stranger to having my life threatened in a Disney attraction. Monstro, the Queen of Hearts, the Carnotaurus, and even the saddest boy in the galaxy have all taken their shots. Even the Wicked Queen back in the day tried to crush me with a boulder. However, none of them, and I mean none of them, have succeeded where a random train has. That locomotive has a higher success rate than any other Disney villain ever. What really cinches it for me is the infamous Inferno Room. My theory has always been that the ride's budget was focused mainly on the loading area and the finale. Unlike the majority of the chaos, the Inferno Room is quite practical, save for that one figure of the judge who is actually the lawyer in the movie. I'm splitting hairs here, but the stalagmites, stalactites, smoke, and dragon really make this my favorite scene in pretty much any dark ride. Not to mention the musty smell and the heat that put it over the top. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride will always hold a special place in my heart, and I hope that it exists as long as Disneyland does. If you know me at all when it comes to the Disney parks, you know I have a love for the mountains. Some of, in my humble opinion, Imagineering's greatest achievements. They were the literal and figurative heights of the park, blending thrills with story, theming with steel, and fear with laughter. Accomplishing any ride-through of these monoliths of theme parks was met with a personal, intrinsic achievement. That is why the first mountain on my list ranks so highly. Space Mountain is always a treat to indulge in, a smooth and upbeat voyage through the cosmos. While it isn't my favorite of the mountains in the park, or even my favorite version of the attraction, space is something I'm drawn to nearly every single time I visit. From the eye-catching structure itself to the sensation of breakneck speeds, the ride has so much going for it. Also, I love how excited guests get to see their picture at the end too. In short, I dig Space Mountain for the thrills and the galactic aesthetics. Now we are entering the top 5, but before we do, I just want to thank all of you for watching the video today. It really means a lot. Also appreciate all the YouTube members and patrons who are making this essay possible. Alright, brace yourselves. Here we go. To be completely honest with you, a year or so ago, I'm not sure I would have put the Haunted Mansion in my top 10. Shocking, I know, but as I have grown closer and closer with the attraction over time, I have to admit that this particularly spooky ride has gained a residence in my heart. Initially, this ride scared me. Well, I should say, scarred me. As a kid, going on it felt like sort of a punishment. Welcome to the happiest land you could possibly imagine, now boo! Almost like the rug was pulled out from under a good time. But despite my obvious traumatic childhood visiting Mickey on the East Coast, I truly learned to appreciate how spectacular this attraction was, is, and will be. While rather unassuming and clean in the exterior, the moment you walk into the parlor, the tonal shift is evident. Haunted is a perfect example of giving creatives boundaries and hurdles to overcome, resulting in show elements that become beloved. Nowhere is that more evident than in the stretching room. I think it is a brilliant way to transport guests to the tunnel leading them to the loading area. The ominous sensation of this prologue to the adventure, along with the portrait gallery, set the stage for something you can't fully experience anywhere else in the park. Again, for me, practicality in attractions is such a huge factor, and Haunted has a great deal of it. The corridor of doors, the ballroom, and the graveyard all feel distinct, but somehow connected. Also, I do appreciate that once the ghosts acknowledge your existence, you finally start to see them. all of this is elevated by a song that is still just as catchy as ever in Grim Grinning Ghosts. While the actual movement of the ride isn't anything overly thrilling, the ability of the Doom Buggies to turn your perspective does allow for very intentional scene design. Haunted Mansion is an icon and definitely has a spot on my list. Also, Haunted Mansion Holiday would probably bump it up a space or two. Maybe I'll do an overlay ranking video if folks enjoy this one.
Well, looks like I'm talking about Indiana Jones Adventure: Temple of the Forbidden Eye.
All bits aside, I can't say enough good things about this ride. While not perfect in my eyes, there is so much Indy does that set the bar for an immersive thrill ride almost 30 years ago. An astonishingly themed queue line, an intriguing story setup, and a ride experience that always feels fresh make it still one of the best places in the whole park. I want to begin with the line itself. To this day, it remains one of my absolute favorites. The introduction of the demigod Mara, the obscure text lining the walls, the spike room, the bat cave, the antechamber, and the projection room have more attention to detail invested than some other full attractions. This makes the admittedly longer walk to and from the ride much more palatable. On the ride side of things, the EMVs, or enhanced motion vehicles, are just one of the coolest means of transportation on any Disney attraction. I first fell in love with these over a Countdown to Extinction, or as it is called today, Dinosaur. Really, I wish there was a way to implement them into more parks because they're so unique. The distinct sections of the temple you bounce and plow through are all memorable too. You've got room full of skeletons, room full of bugs, room full of snakes, room full of skulls, and room full of blow darts, all distinct and attempting to scare all guests equally. I love it. The practical nature of the finale might be my favorite though. The illusion that your EMV moves backward, away from Indy, and the boulder is a timeless effect. This is just a small example of what I mean when I talk about why real, tangible ride experiences matter. It's because they are both engrossing in the moment and can stand the test of time better than any alternative. Also, I love the thought that no matter where in the world Indy goes, a boulder is always after him. This attraction is one I'm always keen to hop on, and that consistent dose of adventure easily puts it in my top 5. Now, the next 3 are what I consider to be my absolute favorites. Like I said earlier, they might shift around in order from time to time, but for me, they have offered up some of my favorite Disneyland memories. I love Big Thunder Mountain, which is funny because as a kid, this one made me physically ill. Good times. Nostalgia aside, I've come to truly fawn over this attraction. This roller coaster doesn't look like a roller coaster. What I mean by that is when you first look at that gorgeous landscape, you might not immediately think it's a thrill ride, and I love it for that fact alone. One of the biggest reasons I love going to theme parks over amusement parks is for the immersion or the ability to transport a guest out of the real world and into another time or place. Thunder does that almost immediately. While you might spot the tracks or a train whipping by, the landscape is typically pretty peaceful. A lovely contrast to what's in store for the riders. The experience, once aboard the attraction, can also vary wildly depending on where you sit, what time of day it is, if the fireworks are happening, or what the weather is like. All that to say, it's dynamic. The front row on a sunny day is pretty tame compared to the last row around midnight. Unlike many other coasters, you also get a lot of bang for your buck, meaning that Thunder feels like a long attraction. This primarily has to do with the 3 lift hills that are littered throughout the experience, each of them uniquely themed and wonderful. From the Rainbow Caverns, to the dynamite-infested finale, to the goat trick on the second hill, each is a slight reprieve before returning to the mayhem. Not to mention that as you fly through the ride, you pass by stunning rockwork, mining equipment, and critters that truly make it feel like a real place. I am just always buzzing when I get off Big Thunder, and I always try to ride it at least once, if not twice, when I'm in the park. Matterhorn! I love the Matterhorn, and I shall do my utmost to impress upon you why. The Matterhorn Bobsleds is the original gangster when it comes to not only the Disney Mountain Range, but just Disney thrill rides in general. I admit that being first doesn't mean being best. For example, the first video game ever made garners my respect, but not necessarily my love. However, the history behind the Matterhorn only boosts my fondness for the ride. Much like Cinderella Castle in Walt Disney World, Matterhorn is sort of an ever-present waypoint in the park, and this comforts me. The design and look of it are just so captivating and always lure me in. It just yodels out adventure. Like Big Thunder before it, you can't immediately tell that it's a roller coaster. Let's start breaking down the elements piece by piece. The queue line, although relatively barren, has a lot to offer if you really start to take notice. Snowshoeing gear, pretty artwork, and regional flags from Switzerland make it feel like a tiny Swiss pavilion that was never made for Epcot. The accent of the safety spiel is also another charming touch that makes the whole experience feel a bit more unique. Is it authentic? No clue. Do I love it? Yes. Let's talk about toboggan-style seating and the ride vehicles themselves. Once again, my initial love of this format is derived from the original Space Mountain in Walt Disney World. While I do enjoy sitting next to friends and family on roller coasters, the isolation factor of sitting solo adds to a different kind of feel. More adventurous, more foreboding. I also just love the feel of the dips and drops throughout. It can get a bit shaky, but again, I feel it adds to the grandeur of the trek. This is only enhanced with a nighttime ride. Again, much like Big Thunder Mountain, the dynamic nature of this attraction cannot be understated. If you manage to get front row at night, the whole experience shifts. You feel all alone plummeting down in the darkness, twisting and turning through icy caverns, and I just cannot get that feeling out of my mind. It is exhilarating. Finally, I would be remiss not to mention the abominable snowman, or as we call him, Harold. A misunderstood and aggressive guy who really adds to the thrill of each ride. Always good to see him. There are a lot of factors that go into my enjoyment of an attraction. Aesthetics, thrills, ride vehicles, wait times, animatronics, ride systems, story, and just overall theming. That last one, theming, is what makes theme parks so enjoyable to me. This ability to immerse you in a world keeps me coming back again and again. To me, there is no attraction that does it better than Pirates of the Caribbean. This is quintessential Disneyland to me. It sort of sweeps my own personal board for all the tenets I listed previously. I want to start with the tone of the ride. Boarding one of many large boats, you calmly glide through the blue bayou, and at first, you would be forgiven for thinking this was going to be an easygoing ride. Not so. Before long, you are floating through the dark back streets and waterways of New Orleans Square before you see it. A skull and crossbones. A talking skull and crossbones. Up until this point, except for that very brief banjo version of some Pirates music and some paintings in the queue line, you would have no idea what the focal point of this attraction is. Besides the name, too, of course. Suddenly, you are whisked down a waterfall and the theme song starts to play. Another waterfall, and you are fully enveloped in the world of pirates. I won't lie to you, the cave sequence is my absolute favorite. If I could, I would take a 20-minute boat ride down waterfalls and into caverns. Disney, call me. Let's make it happen. I digress, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. The art, the staging, the craftsmanship are all on display in full force. One aspect of slower moving rides, chock full of details, is that you could go on them 1,000 times and never see everything. And Pirates is no exception. The rest of the experience is laden with iconic show scenes that still resonate to this day. The ship attacking the fort, the burning town, and the prisoners trying to escape by coaxing a dog are all standouts to me. Pirates also holds additional meaning to me because it was one of the last attractions Walt Disney himself worked on, and you can sort of feel it. While the whole ride has had updates over time, it still feels firmly planted in a different era. Let's talk about a few of those updates in the forms of Barbossa and Captain Jack Sparrow. Honestly, I think their implementation is relatively minimal and fits in just fine. I love me some Hector Barbossa, and Captain Jack is a character I've thoroughly enjoyed over the years. The whole ride itself clocks in over 15 minutes, but it goes by in a flash, while also somehow being incredibly memorable. As someone who has had the chance to visit a lot more in recent years, I have also come to love the efficiency of the attraction itself. Pirates can put through thousands of people per hour, and the wait times are typically not more than 30 minutes. That's a lot of bang for your buck, sort of like Big Thunder. It also combines a few of my favorite attraction styles in that it is a boat ride, a dark ride, and has a few thrills. Boat rides do such a good job of hiding their mechanics, which leads to more immersion for me. Dark rides offer up significant re-rideability and protection from either extreme heat or rainy days. Lastly, the thrill factor from a few drops adds a unique flair. Once again, like Haunted Mansion, proving that a hurdle, in this case the train tracks, can be a benefit. All in all, Pirates of the Caribbean is my favorite Disneyland attraction. It has a bit of everything, and it does it all masterfully. No trip to the park is complete without it. Everybody, thank you so much for watching this one. Please feel free to leave your top 10 down in the comments below. I would love to read them and talk about it with you guys. Now, please, all I ask is that everybody's respectful to one another, because everybody's top 10 is probably going to be a little bit different. As you could probably see, my top 10 probably doesn't line up with everybody's, but still, I just want to read yours and, have a fun discussion about it. I think it'd be really fun. Either way, thank you so much for watching the channel. If you want to support it, consider liking this video and sharing it around. That would be a huge, huge help. What I'm trying to do over the next couple of months is have kind of a schedule. So Mondays and Wednesdays, I'll be producing a video kind of like this, or a vlog, maybe a couple of vlogs, a couple of video essays, we'll see. And then on Fridays, I will be streaming live from the parks. So if you want to hang out here, that's what kind of schedule is going to be going forward. And then also we've got the Sunday night streams for anybody who wants to just come hang out, we'll chill, we'll talk, talk about theme parks, talk about whatever in life. But yes, thank you so much. If you're not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And a huge thank you to all the people who are making this channel like my job, such as the members here on YouTube. And by doing that, you can click the join button, or to the patrons. Thank you so much, patrons. I appreciate everybody who supports anyway, or the donations. We've got an Amazon affiliate link. All these things are down in the links below if you want to know how to support the channel. That's the best way and the best place to look. Either way, until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome.